Good evening and welcome to the special council meeting of Thursday, January 9th, 2025. We'll call the meeting to order at 5 p.m. We'll begin with the land acknowledgement. We respectfully acknowledge that the Township of Cabmonaghan is located on the Treaty 20 Mississauga territory in the traditional territory of the Mississauga Anishinaabe. We offer our gratitude to First Nations for their care for and teachings about these lands. May we honor these teachings. We'll look to council for approval of the agenda before us tonight. Moved by Councillor Burns, seconded by Deputy Mayor Huntley. All in favor? That is approved. Any disclosures of pecuniary interest? Seeing none, there is no closed session, so we'll move right to the heart of the matter. 6.1, Ms. Pope for the Finance 2025-01 second draft budget presentation. Oh, I apologize. Before we do that, we do need an amendment a motion to approve the amended contents of the presentation from this afternoon's meeting. Moved by Councillor Burns, seconded by Councillor Edgerton. All in favor? That is approved. Ms. Pope.
Thank you. Through you, Mayor, to all of council, public and staff. I will be presenting the 2025 budget presentation second draft. This was presented today at 1 o'clock. So anyone watching online, this is the same presentation with the first slide being amended to reflect the changes that took place this afternoon. However, we are going to walk through this presentation in detail as the public are present, and we would like to be able to provide that information to everyone in attendance. The second draft, we have an amendment to the at this meeting at 5 p.m. because there was an $11,000 reduction today during the discussions. There was a removal of $7,000 from the station park sign under the economic development, and that's under the capital program. There was a removal of the $5,000 butterfly project under parks and facilities. However, we've added $1,000 to operations under parks and facilities in lieu of the butterfly project for gardens. Therefore, the actual change is a 0.09% change with that $11,000 reduction. So you'll see throughout the report, it'll reference 4.99. As of the evening meeting, it's actually 4.9. So just to keep that in mind as we progress and move through the budget. As an overview, the budget does not change any of the municipality's current service levels, and the 2024 actuals do include expenditures up to October 31st and any November invoices that we've received to date. The 2024 surplus is currently estimated at $250,000. However, we're still pending year-end reconciliations, and this will be applied to the final budget. The second budget meeting presents an additional opportunity for council to engage in discussions, offer input, and implement further modifications to the budget. Staff have continued to reduce budget expenditures, and a review was conducted to ensure all the remaining unspent funds from the OCIF were fully utilized for eligible capital projects. Today, council did discuss a little bit. We ran out of time, so this evening those discussions will continue. We are hopeful to have information available to the finance team so that we can have a final budget before you on the 27th of January. Approximately every 1% municipal residential tax rate increase equals an additional $117,100 in revenue towards the operating and capital budgets. Budget basics. The budget is a blueprint that defines how resources are collected and allocated. There are two main components, which are the operating budget and the capital budget. Of course, the capital budget, if you purchase a new vehicle, it does have associated effects on the operating budget with regards to fuel lines and vice versa. Council does have the flexibility to reallocate, reprioritize between programs and services, and provide limiting increases to taxes to residents to maintain the current levels of service that are required to manage at the municipality. The municipality must maintain a balanced budget. The Municipal Act prohibits the municipality from running a deficit on operating expenditures, and we can only borrow and incur debt according to our annual repayment limit. A few key steps that we've been through many times with council and for the public information. We develop a budget annually every year. This starts in June and July when the actual schedule and timeline is presented to council. Then staff are reviewing the actuals to budget through the summer months and propose within September the final submission for first round budget discussions. These estimates are provided to the budget committee and then further refined. There are further discussions and meetings between the CIO, Director of Finance, Mayor, and the management team and senior staff. This year, we presented our first draft at the end of November. That was earlier than previous years, as it used to be the first week of December. We've had opportunity to meet with council members individually to ask questions, further refine the budget, find efficiencies according to actual to budget. And now we are presenting our second draft today, both during the day and in the evening for the public to comment as well. We are hopeful in our timeline that we will be able to have a final budget to council on the 27th of January. Ontario's property tax assessment and taxation system. The Government of Ontario establishes the province's assessment and the laws and determines the education tax rate. MPAC, Municipal Property Assessment Corporation, determines the property assessments for all properties in Ontario. The municipalities determine the revenue requirements, they set the municipal tax rates, and they collect the property taxes to pay for municipal services. As one caveat there, the tax bill itself is actually sent out to residents with the municipal portion, the education portion, and the county portion. The property owners receive the bills and pay the property taxes for services within the community. As we don't have confirmation of the rates for the county and education portions as of yet, we've provided this slide as a comparator looking into 2024 tax rates. The actual bill, the 100% portion of the bill is combined of three components: municipal, county, and education. We are responsible at the municipal levy for 58% of the 2024 tax rate. 12% came from the education tax rate, and 30% came from the county. So today's discussions here with our council represents 58% of the bill. Upper and lower tier budgets. Some municipalities are a single tier. They operate independently. However, we are one of 8 lower tier municipalities in the county of Peterborough. So that's why you'll see on your tax bill that there is an upper tier, which is the county of Peterborough, and a lower tier, which is the township of Cabbie-Monaghan. MPAC, Province of Ontario, and the municipality. So MPAC determines the property assessments for all properties in Ontario. As you know, we are still using the January 1st, 2016 phase-in values that were provided by MPAC and phased in up to the 2020 year. Since then, the province has not released a province-wide property assessment update, and they have frozen the tax values from the 2016 values. This continues to be in place today for the calculation of the 2025 tax rates. The MPAC median current value assessment in Cabbie-Monaghan is estimated at $400,000. And just to be clear, properties in our communities that are sold at $1.2 million or $1 million, they are not assessed by MPAC at those values at today's sales rates. They are estimated at what would that property have sold at back in 2016 when they did the assessment on all the other properties. So when you receive your tax bill, you'll notice the current value assessment is most likely closer to 300, 400, or 500,000, depending on your property value. Property assessments will remain the same in 2025 as they were in 2024 and previous years, and we will await the Ontario government's economic outlook to determine when the next province-wide property assessment update will occur. This MPAC example has been provided historically, just showing that historically when MPAC did release the values, they would measure the values of all the properties as of a specific date. That time was January 1st, 2016. Then they would roll it out over a 4-year period. So it didn't jump in 1 year. It was rolled out over a 4-year period. So in this example here, the property was previously valued at $162,000 and it went up to $228,000. So they did increments of $16,500 per year being added on. You can see the growth from 2017 to 2020. The OMPF, or also known as the Ontario Municipal Partnership Fund, is funding provided to municipalities to address changes in rural northern communities, funding based on community fiscal health indicators, usually coming from the FIR, the Financial Information Return. As you can see in this slide, there are historical values. Back in 2018, we were receiving $506,000. To this year, we expect to receive $580,400. These funds are used to help offset and decrease the operating budget and avoid alleviating pressure on the municipal property tax rate. The OCIF, the Ontario Community Infrastructure Fund, this is again provincial allocation of funds to small and rural northern communities. This is formula based. We are expecting to receive $314,191 this year in the 2025 budget. We have decided to utilize all previous years of reserves that were left over and then the current year against the 2025 capital budget projects, which are mostly under the public works projects. The CCBF, the Canada Community Building Fund, is where Canadian municipalities receive over $2 billion from Canada Community Fund each year. This again is another formula-based annual allocation. We are receiving $328,025 this year. Based on the budget and the funds that are eligible, we have pulled all except for $41,000 from previous years. So if you take the $41,000 from previous years plus the $328,025 that we're going to receive in this year's allocation, we expect by year end to have a reserve of $369,550 towards eligible programs. Staff are recommending to retain these funds to be considered towards other capital projects such as the new fire station. Asset replacement. We've been through many years of the asset replacement with the potential loss of funding reports and the service delivery reviews back in 2011 and 2012. These were achieved in 2013 and 2015 with the final recommendation being that we could finance the asset replacement reserve funding through the municipal tax rate without any subsidy elsewhere. Currently this year, we have $2.9 million recommended for transfer into the asset replacement reserve, and this does represent 100% of the audited depreciation calculations in the year end of 2023. The reason why we use this is just a benchmark. It's not a requirement. We're trying to put back into the asset replacement reserve the dollar value of that which we're using in the current year. This does not cover indexing or increased costs because all the values are recorded at historical cost. It also does not consider any assets that were previously depreciated and are no longer depreciating within the books. So again, this is only a benchmark so that we put funds away. Reserve and reserve funds. Reserves can be established by council or by the province, and there's a strategy for funding programs and projects. In our reserve reporting, you'll see that we allocate and have different categories for review. Some have specific requirements, so we cannot spend unless they meet those requirements. Others have direction, but there is ability for motions of council to make changes. Flexible or committed funds, that's what I just spoke to about making changes, whether they're discretionary or not. And there are also tools for long-term financial sustainability. We need to keep our focus on using reserves for their intended purposes. For the committed reserves and any requirements, we absolutely do. For the ones that are by motion of council, that there's some flexibility, there would have to be a public reason or a public motion to remove those funds from one and move it to another, but it can be done. The annual repayment limit, which was mentioned earlier in the report, we only have 3 debentures at this time that are external to the municipality for the water wastewater from 2016, and we are well within our limits, but that is always revisited every year and at any debenture report. Grant applications have been approved in the past. One specific one where we had a recent mold assessment at the Millbrook Arena on December 6th. It was provided to council, and to protect the health and safety of the public, it is now remaining closed. A scope change request was submitted to the Ministry of Infrastructure at the beginning of the year on that project because we do have that grant and we're hoping to be able to use that. Decision has not yet been made, but we are awaiting, and we do know that there is progress happening on the back end. We do also have the rehabilitation of the old Millbrook School, another ICIP project. We do have, this is the final year for both of those projects to have fund from the municipal tax levy, and the project is required to be completed by 2026 for both of them. Current capital infrastructure projects, we've had three most recently. In 2022, we opened up the Parks and Public Works Millbrook Depot. In November of 2023, the Cavan Public Works Operations Center was opened, and we're working through the fire station number 1 and ambulance station, and that is hopeful to be in operation by the end of this month. The funding for the Parks and Public Works Millbrook Depot is internal through our reserves. The Cavan Public Works Operations Center will be coming back to council on the 27th of January with alternate financial options. And the fire station, there will be a report in the future once all the final invoices are received and the project is finalized. Council's direction is needed now. The Budget Committee was comprised of the Mayor, CAO, and Director of Finance, and we've come to this resulted at the 1 o'clock meeting, it was 4.99, now it's 4.9, proposed municipal tax rate for further discussion and direction of council. In order to balance the budget, if council wishes to reduce the impact of the municipal tax rate increase, there would be further budget cuts needed. As a reminder, every 1% of municipal tax rate increases equal $117,100 in revenue. With that 1% applied, a property valued at $100,000, which we know is not the case, but this is used as a multiplier across municipalities for comparison. So a property valued by MPAC at $100,000 would have an increase of $7.44. However, we know that the median MPAC value for Cavan Monaghan is around $400,000, and therefore $400,000 with a 1% tax rate increase would mean a dollar value of $29.94 for 1%. We still are using the MPAC values from 2016, as mentioned previously. The tax levy comparison, this is a chart just to provide the last 5 years of the tax levies to show the increase in the tax levy and the increase in the weighted assessment year over year. We've had approximately a 1.8% increase in our weighted assessment, and in this second draft initially today was proposed at the 4.99% for the tax rate increase. The Consumer Price Index rose 2%, which has been applied throughout this document. The CUPE union are to be renewed next year in this year in 2025. However, we're carrying a placeholder in there as the negotiations won't occur until after Q1. The Construction Price Index was set at 3.3% year over year between Q3 of 2023 and 2024, and therefore the development charges will be indexed accordingly. And on December 16th, Council approved the annual user fees and charges bylaw to ensure that we reduce the impact of cost of services on the municipal tax rate. The municipal tax rate, this is a chart that's used to balance the property classes with the realty tax class, realty tax qualifiers according to the CVA assessment on the MPAC roll. And then we have tax ratios and rate reductions as well applied to give us a weighted assessment to determine what the taxes will be. Based on a 4.99% increase, this would generate $12.2 million for the municipality. The budget summary pulls all the details together from the operating and the capital budgets and is offset by all the DCs, reserves, grant funding, and other revenues that we do bring in to surmise with what the total cost would be to the tax rate and property taxes. In our operating budget, we have a consolidated department net increase of approximately 4.7%. You'll see this on an additional slide in the chart where it's itemized by department. This indicates each department's effort to maintain our operations, manage the inflation, and adjust to pressures on the delivery of products and services. The alignment of wages to our primary departments happened this year according to the Gallagher Pay Equity Review. We updated source deductions and benefit rates, applied 2% CPI, a grid indexing, and applied the same 2% across the board to hydro, gas, fuel, telecommunications, and internal allocation expense lines. This is the table I was referencing with regarding to the operating budget. The consolidated net changes, if you add all internal departments together, it's approximately 4.7%. When you add that to council, the boards and authorities and conservation regions and police services, we're at approximately 4% overall. Water and wastewater is not paid for by the property tax rate. It's included there for comparison, but that does not apply to the tax rate. The environmental tax rate has actually decreased. The decrease was $1,455 in the budget. They continue to receive Circular Materials Ontario revenues from the blue boxes collected at the transfer station, and the reduced environmental tax rate is $1.42 for every 100,000 of current value assessment. Water wastewater operating budget is based on the financial plan, rate study, user fees and charges bylaws, and the rate study analysis. Any remaining funds at the year end are transferred to the water and wastewater reserve, future projects or operational costs. They are funded by the users, and therefore this does not impact the municipal tax rate. In the 2025 budget, there is another review for the water wastewater financial plan and study. Capital budget. So the municipality must look beyond simply providing the existing services. We have to be guided by clear and overarching vision and make sure that we can fund our future infrastructure. Therefore, in our capital budget overview, we have approximately $12.2 million in total capital requests. On the next chart, you'll see that that is funded through rollovers, future year approvals, asset replacement reserve, other reserves and other funding, and grant applications that are pending. The net amount in this municipal budget affecting the 4.9% rate is $4,117,351. The next chart or page itemizes the different changes between the first draft in November to the second draft as presented today. You'll note in the capital changes that we've added a net $5,800 for recreation management software. There was a request from Mr. Hack to increase Station Park sign to $14K. It was applied to this budget. However, during the 1 o'clock meeting, it was removed, or the extra $7,000 was removed, and therefore that has now come back out. The application of the MMAH funds towards GovStack migration remains in place. We've reduced the transfer to reserves for both the zoning bylaw and the official plan. We've added, according to motion of council at the first draft meeting, a Parkland General Reserve Fund and added 1% equivalent of the levy, which is $117,100. MVT had requested to add the MVT bridge at Old Millbrook School that was added at $15,000. And there was additional CCBF funding applied to the hot mix paving and sidewalks under public works in this budget. We've removed $100,000 from the budget to defer the Fallis Line East road extension to future budget years as well. The road milling was in the first draft and was an itemized line. However, that was moved and allocated amongst the surface treatment roads. Still maintains the full project cost, so it didn't reduce the cost, but it is including the pulverization within the surface treatment roads cost. Public Works also provided additional details about the roadside mower, which was contained in the report and discussed during the first draft meeting as well. The capital requests for 2025 are presented on each page here. This is to summarize by departments or consolidate when there are few amounts through these budgets. The CAO, Finance, and IT is on the first line here. The main change here, as I mentioned before, was the Facility Recreation Management Software Addition, $7,300 with MMAH funding of $1,500 and a net $5,800 impact on the municipal tax levy. The next page is Planning, Building, and Economic Development. In here, the Station Park sign, this is the one that I was referencing. The request was for $14,000 from 7 included and then removed at the 1 o'clock meeting today. So it's back down to $7,000. On the next page, we have Parks and Facilities, which is the David Suzuki Foundation Butterfly Project was actually removed from this budget during the 1 o'clock meeting today, and a $1,000 amount in lieu of was placed in the operating budget to accommodate for similar projects amongst our 18 gardens that we currently have. Fire department, that has stayed the same with the same initial amounts as per the first draft. with some discussion that was had today at the 1 o'clock meeting. Roads Environmental Services. This is where you'll see the majority of the changes where the OCIF fund is now trying to fund most of these projects. If you look to the right where it says adjusted total, that's what impacts the municipal tax levy. So as an example, if you look at the 5th line down, the hot mix paving for various roads, although there is 300,000 in the budget to do that work, 84,400 is coming from the CCBF funding, 215,600 coming from asset replacement reserve, a net zero cost of municipal taxpayer at this time. So the right, whenever we're cutting or we're looking at reducing funds in capital, we need to maintain that we're looking at the right because that's where it actually impacts the tax rate. The next slide is the grant applications that we've submitted that are still pending approval. They have not yet been approved, and therefore these are estimated at this time. We've included $40,890 for the active living and connection to community amenities that we are anticipating an approval but don't have final confirmation on. The other aspects for the new fire station exhaust system and the Fallis Line Road extension are applications that we have in process, and we don't have any current funds this year required, but we're just keeping them on the radar so council is aware. There are other grant applications submitted. This is just a summary list of some of them that we've submitted. And this is an ongoing project that we're working with Grant Match to make sure that we don't miss an opportunity in order to keep the tax rate low, but also provide additional services and amenities to the public. Water and wastewater is a separate user fee. It does not affect the tax rate. However, in here are the capital requests. These are itemized according to a 10-year plan in the study, and then the user rates are set and established accordingly. These all adhere to the user fee study as well. This is the end of the overview of the slides for Finance Report 2025-01, and we are looking for council's direction because now with the $11,000 reduction, we're down to a 4.9% municipal tax rate increase before discussion with the public. And we will need to have information by the end of today to confirm where we're moving for the final draft on January the 27th.
Thank you, Ms. Pope, for that high-level summary. We want to hear from members of the public now. I've just been trying to confer with the clerk. We do need a motion, I think, to receive the presentation as it stands, but because we were a bit tight for time in the previous discussion, there is the intention for council to have a discussion and keep the budget conversation going after we hear from the public in attendance tonight. So I just want to clarify, clerk, just so if we have a motion to receive that, that doesn't prohibit us from revisiting the discussion or recommencing the discussion after the public input.
Through you, Mr. Mayor, to yourself and the rest of council, I would suggest as we have before us recommendation under item 6.1, we would defer that motion until the end of the public meeting, and then council has an opportunity to open the discussion back up, and we'll revisit the motion under 6.1.
That is perfect. So we will, if council is amenable, we'll just defer that decision. Do we need no? Everyone's in agreement? Very good. So with that, we need a motion to a resolution rather to open the public portion of the meeting, moved by Deputy Mayor Huntley, seconded by Councillor Edgerton. All in favor? That is approved. So the members of the public are here. So now this is an opportunity for you to approach the mic and provide comment. So how the microphones work, just for the tutorial, some of us who haven't been here before, you'll see this light up. That means you're live. So, but you also have to wait your turn. So until So I have one live mic at a time, and I have ultimate control as a priority to take it over. So anyone wishing to speak, please approach the microphone, state your name and address, and then the floor is yours. And we'll hear from you, Leslie. So by all means, anyone wishing to, please approach and follow accordingly.
Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. My name is Stephen Fisher. I live on Mount Pleasant Road on the corner of Preston Road and Mount Pleasant. A few years back, to everyone's surprise that lives there, the bridge was removed over the creek on Preston Road. That was a throughfare for cars, but mainly for people that like to walk and explore all the trails in that beautiful area. The bridge was removed. We were told numerous times that we'd have a footbridge put in. To that, right as this moment, nothing's ever happened. I'm just wondering if we can find it in the budget to put maybe a 20-foot footbridge across. That's the distance from me to you, Mr. Mayor, just across there. Without the bridge, people from Edgewood, my area, cannot walk across the creek now and enjoy the beautiful trails that we have. People have put bird feeders out there. Believe it or not, there's over 200 wreaths that people have made along the way, and it's fun to walk along and count them, let your dog have a run and everything, but that was all taken away. Now we have to get in our car and drive around the other way, and that takes the fun out of exercise. Anyways, my request is if we can see it in the budget, just to put a small footbridge in. We keep, every time someone asks from the neighborhood, they always come to me and say, Steve, can you go down there and talk to them? They're getting the runaround, whatever. I get the runaround too. I get what goes on, but I just really would like to see it. We have a beautiful opportunity here. That is a beautiful area. There's a pair of swans that swim up and down there. There's all kinds of wildlife. And what's happened now by taking that out, believe it or not, it has turned into a waste site. People are coming out of their way to dump their garbage down there now. So when we drive around the other side and we let our dogs off and walk, we are looking at garbage that is just disgusting. I came down and spoke to the fellow here that's in charge of waste management. And he says he gets 101 phone calls about that, and they're always down there trying to pick it up, which is great. But we're ruining a beautiful area. I think that footbridge would open the door to a lot of people coming. We can even make it look like a suspension bridge or something, take pictures and put it on our website and draw people into the area. It's just going to waste right now. And that's such a shame because it is such a beautiful part of our area. That's really all I have to say. I really would love to see that footbridge put back. So, sorry.
So two things. First, can the clerk just get the formal address? I think you said the intersection. Can she just have the number? Perfect. Yeah, and I do recall the bridge, like obviously when the road work was done with the decommissioning of the previously existing bridge. So what I think we can do, we haven't done any due diligence on the walking bridge itself at this point, and we're very near the end of this budget process. But if Chris, I see our director of, our manager of Public Works and Parks and Rec, not Public Works. That maybe that's something that can be explored next year over the course of the year, and maybe some planning, and then could be considered at the budget process for that. Because it would need to be, we would need to think of a design and the composition and then get some ballpark. And Chris has been doing a lot of the due diligence for some of the bridge work that we've been doing in the Mildred Valley trails. But that is something that we did talk about when it was being decommissioned, that there would be a great opportunity for an expansion of the footbridge. It really is. Yep. Yeah. 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 Oh, we understand. So, before I defer to Chris, any questions or comments with any members of council? But Chris, if you can take that on board and come back maybe and add that as a project list for deliverables to do some due diligence on a footbridge. I think there was some cross jurisdictional issues with the county in that decommissioning that bridge as well at a time. I think that's probably gone now that the bridge has been decommissioned. So I think that autonomy is now ours and we have a bit more exclusive control over it. So if Chris can add that, we don't have any due diligence or any way to budget for any sort of project at this late juncture of the budget process for this year. But if Chris can add that to his portfolio, we can definitely look at it for next year's budget for sure.
Here we go. We were told that Google was informed that the bridge was removed. It is amazing every day the number of people that turn down there, and we just stand there going, give them 30 seconds and then they hit the cul-de-sac and come back, you know? So maybe we can get that addressed too, because that's unnecessary traffic through there. Oh, sorry.
And maybe we'll ask Drew if you can just investigate that with maybe the signage is insufficient for a turnaround. Just if there's a dead end signage there, we should look at that as well with regards to including that. Hold on. Oh, sorry. Sorry, the mic thing is I'm going to be a bit litigious about it because there's people watching and they can't hear at all if your mic's not live. So I'm sorry. I'm just trying to make sure that people want to hear what you're saying. And I'm sure there's people watching that you probably talk to about these projects, so they can't hear you if you're not on there. So I'm going to turn mine off.
I was just going to say, there is a small sign there, but and I've asked in the past for streetlights on that corner there because there are no streetlights and there's a very deep ditch. The problem is you do not see the sign until you've already committed to the turn. And that's too late at that point. You have to go down the road and around the cul-de-sac and back out. Okay.
So thanks. So Drew, if you can just investigate those comments and take that on board as well, and then maybe you can report back to council if there's something that's needed, or if you can maybe improve it because of the illumination, let's use that word for a sake of it, maybe we can improve it that way too. Okay, thanks very much for your comments, Stephen. We appreciate it. Absolutely. So we got that rough one out of the way. The first one's always a bit tricky, but it's on and then off. It's a bit litigious, laborious, and I apologize about that. But anyways, next member of public who'd like to speak tonight. Welcome, sir. So I'm going to turn mine off and you hit that button, name and address, and then go for it.
Scott Walkowitz, 1380 Vista Crescent. Just have a question regarding the reserve fund. How do you justify how much comes out of it when you're dealing with a shortfall in any area of the budget? And as well, I imagine everybody would probably understand we're probably going through one of the worst economic times across the whole country, where people are feeling the effect of inflation. A lot of people have had to remortgage at higher rates. And now we're dealing with almost a 5% increase in the taxes. What do you consider to be a stable rate then when you talk about the reserve fund?
That's a great question. And obviously in the circumstance of the context isn't lost on any of us. I mean, we haven't finished yet. We kind of got cut short. One of the things that we haven't done, but I think what you're asking about is the ARR reserve. So the asset replacement reserve. So the 100% funding of that reserve has never been achieved by any council previously. So it was a legislation that came into effect, I believe, in the early 2010s and has now sort of been imposed on us that we're always catching up. And so for us, how we approach it is by trying to put away as much of our previous year's depreciation as possible. So we are always trying to optimize that. We've gotten up to 77% of our total, overall reserve contribution, which is, I think, the best fiscal situation in any township that I've ever heard of at all the councils and different conferences that we're at and conversations. And the asset replacement or asset management reserve is something we're continually being downloaded additional things that need to be included in it. So it's definitely a balance. I believe that 3% is an attainable objective, or in the 3% is manageable given those wage increases that are helping people afford the cost increases. And some of those are union contracts. We also have, contracts that have percentage increases for things like fuel, like cost built in, that have increases that we can't just decide not to levy and pay for because we have the unique inability to operate at a deficit unlike other levels of government. So, I mean, for me, I think that these are tough years municipally as well, because there isn't additional funds coming from other sources. There's additional responsibilities and requirements that are being downloaded to municipalities. So as difficult as it is, I think from the conversation we had at the very end of the meeting, where we kind of had to end it to get ready for the public meeting tonight, the consensus was somewhere in the 3% is where the low threes is where we're looking to get to as a council. And if you want to put it in perspective, just because, in thinking about the budget and planning for it, I've done the math. So it's about, for every 1% off, to reduce the levy by 1%, it's about 4% of the asset replacement reserve. So we're at 100 right now and we haven't touched it. So if the budget were to stay the same and we were to go down to 96%, well, that 4.9 goes to 3.9. And so I think the consensus from, the majority of us, where we're trying to get into the threes. So 1% would get us in the high threes, but if there's additional savings that we can find, or maybe utilizing, I think the highest that I can remember, and Ms. Pope might be able to correct me, maybe not on the spot. I think last year was 88% that we put away, or so we used 12% of the ARR. So that's about, changes every year, but that would be about 3% reduction this year. But we want to keep increasing the amount that we're putting away so that we can use it for the right things. So there's a lot of dedicated reserves that we don't have flexibility on, but we have flexibility that we don't have to put away the full 2.95 million every year for that asset replacement reserve. So I hope that kind of answers your question. It's not, every one of us will have a different answer. And the question is, what's your comfortability level with not saving for the things that you're going to need versus, you know, a balance of taxing at a rate that is affordable. But again, I think the other thing that is important that Ms. Pope put forward, a lot of people, I think when they're moving to the community, they're not familiar with an upper and a lower tier system. So we only have control in last year of that 58 cents. And, you know, the county has already approved a county council budget increase of 8.4%. So that is done and dusted, and that is going to increase your, you know, your valuation, your CVA implications on that 30% by a completely separate amount than what we're going to raise. So we can't worry about that because we can't control it other than the 2 votes that the mayor and that myself and the deputy mayor have. So that's done, but we need to do what's best for the community and try to come up with a balanced number that makes sense. But so far we're trying to target in that the conversation yet today was that whatever we're doing with the asset replacement or additional cuts, we're trying to get into the low threes. Thank you. Other questions, members of the public? Mr. Steele, welcome.
As many people know, asset management is very dear to my heart. And thank you, Kimberly, for clearing up something to me. And I think it's probably one of the most important things talking about this, that 2.9 million was unadjusted. So it is actually cost-based. So if you look at the true cost of replacement, it's way out of balance, especially for the last 2 years. And when you go back, it's way out of adjustment. If you follow the plan and that you've had escalation of 50% during that period of time, you're only going to have half the cover. And I think that the 2 people we talk about county council, we can see where the whole issue of not using your asset management and putting away for the future comes back to bite you, and it comes back to bite you in a big way. You can't continue to go like this. This is the old revolving credit card where, okay, I can't pay it on this one. I'll just get another credit card and put another one and pay the $10 a month to pay the minimum amount. Eventually, it's going to catch up to you. I'm probably the only one tonight that will talk that supporting that asset management and making sure that those reserves are in place. You know, you have 2 things. One, you either increase the amount of revenue in order to pay things, or the other one is lower the costs in there, and you have to start to put it in place. So just to have a conversation around this, as you can tell, I'm an older. I'm hopefully that I leave this place in a better financial position so that people can take care of it. You have to take a look at this long term. And if you keep on putting it off and putting it off, it's just the same as not going to a dentist, and it's getting worse and worse. You're either going to have to pull all the teeth out, or you're going to have to spend a ton of money in repairing. So it's important to have that balance, and whether or not the full amount this year, or we have to start going back to it, because when you're pulling money out of the piggy bank, you don't have it in the rainy days that you need to look at it. So I was going to ask, where do we stand on the adjusted assets? Is there a spreadsheet that show what our assets are sitting on the books versus what the replacement cost is?
Thanks for that question, Ms. Pope.
Thank you. Great question. So we definitely do have that because we've purchased software a number of years ago called Public Sector Digest citywide, and we track there the actual replacement cost versus historical cost. Because as you know, in the books, it's recorded at historical cost, number one, so it doesn't consider the indexing over the years. And then we can extrapolate the depreciation that existed in prior years and add that together. So we can collaborate that detail, but I don't have the final figure today. I wasn't anticipating that question, but I could definitely provide that. When we present the 100%, it was a strategy as part of that phase 3 strategy to say, okay, how can we fund the asset replacement reserve through the municipal tax rate? And this goes back to the previous days with the reviews on making sure that we're sustainable on our own. The other point too, just for clarification, is the percentage. So last year we were actually able to achieve 94% of our depreciation levels. We always bring forward 100%. And it's that cost balancing effect of whether we put those funds aside today or pay more later in the future.
Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Steele. Other members of the public? Floor is yours. And Al, we'll see you back here, I'm sure. Maybe sooner than later. Maybe sooner than later. Any other people wishing to come forward? If not, I'm sure Mr. Steele has more than one question for us. Welcome back, Al.
So this is a similar question to last year. What's the plan? I know that you got the strategic plan coming up for the next council meeting. And yes, I read over what it was. Found it interesting that there were 89 participants online that went through. 80 of those were residents, and about 2/3 had lived here for at least 10 years. So interesting. 29 residents turned out for the open house. And there were 30 community participant members that were used or that went to group sessions. I haven't found any of those people to find out what was discussed. But as far as the reach of a community that's 10,000, we're not getting enough community interaction. As we see out here, this about the same turnout as last year. I don't know how many people are online, but I know that yesterday a seniors group met at the library. One of Carla's actions there, and we did talk about this. The big issue is trying to get participation. And we talk about this in the last council, we talked about it as well in the previous one before. I think it's important that we have to start to change our strategies, and I see nothing in that in the budget to accommodate it. I think of putting out there and trying to do a poll campaign just isn't working. It has to be a push. And you need to budget some money and actually put some marketing behind it in order to encourage more activity. And for example, this type of meeting, we talk an awful lot about numbers, but most people that come here want to find out, what's this budget got for me? As somebody in rural Cavan, I want to know what my money is paying for. I'm a little more actively involved with what goes on in the local government. Most of my neighbors, they come to me and ask, what's happening? What's new? What's my taxes going to be? And I keep on saying, you got to be active. Well, I never find out what's going on. So I think there has to be something put in place for active programs to touch the community. And I'll leave it.
Thanks for that, Al. Well, a couple of things we can just briefly speak to. I mean, you're right. And I think with some of the engagement, it's amazing to me the averages for participation across municipalities with any sort of interaction. And I think it's not a feather in the cap, but it's an issue that municipalities of all sizes are facing. That when there is an attempt to engage and participate, it's not picked up. So no one's found the silver bullet, but the only way to keep, pursuing better and improved things is to try different things. So you will have seen one of the new additions to the fleet is even the basic signage, letterboard sign that was outside. We just received it. We've ordered it a year ago plus. Though I believe we have 2 of those, if I'm not mistaken, Ms. Hurley. We have 1 right now, another one's still coming in. So the plan is to deploy those throughout the township about, other matters or ongoings or opportunities to try to help be a visible signage of engagement. So that's one thing that we're working on. With the 2 things you mentioned with public engagement, those consultants, some of those things we have never tried before. So a part of the tender a part of the consideration for who was going to win that tender when they were being reviewed is, well, what are they trying to do to engage the public? And I didn't appreciate or didn't believe in some of the things, but at the end of the day, we're also restricted by who is applying to do or bidding on some of the tenders we're putting out. And unfortunately, like as much as we might not feel that it's a success, with people in this space that are trying to engage in communities bigger and smaller than ours, the participation, the averages are less than 2% and 1%. And that's an industry standard. So when you get 3%, I'm not happy with that. I don't think anyone on the council is happy with that. But there are evidences of working with companies and engagement issues to try to come up with alternative strategies. And we've talked about a ton of them. But I think you're on to something with regards to what I think we're on the precipice of is needing an actual person in charge of municipal communication. We don't have that. We don't have any staff person. It comes forward with it's not an exclusive person. That's what I meant. Sorry. It's not that people don't do it, but there's not an exclusive department at all communications. Economic development does a ton of it and covers off as much as they can. But to your point, it's probably become its own position now. And that is going to be a requirement that is going to require, a no staff position and all the costs associated with that, whether it's OMERS and other things of that nature. But we're doing very well with what we have, but we always and continue need to be looking under new rocks to figure out better ways to do it.
I thank you for the comments, but I think we've been down the path time and time again, keep on trying to do it, bombarding people out of going to websites and so on. People just don't do that. You have to be proactive and start pushing things out. And you do have the opportunity to do that. All you need to do is get an email and make it incentivize it for people that becomes a way of receiving information. And if it has a price tag attached to it, people tend to buy into these things more. I find that people feel that local government has less value than the other 2 levels of government above you. But this has a direct effect with them of how they live.
Why don't you keep going for one more and then we'll try again.
Okay, the other one, and I thank council for bringing in the individual about medical recruitment and so on. And I really see nothing in the plan that addresses that side of recruitment, especially given the situation of changes that may take place with the existing side of things and the new regulation that there is no longer a single practitioner, that it has to be in a team, and that you have to have a facility that will house both people. We have a shortage here of doctors right now, and the doctors that are in place have overextended their practices even at this point. And again, I see nothing to address that in the budget.
Well, you're stealing some thunder, Al, because like I said, we ran out of time for the portion of it. So there's something that I'm going to put forward to council once we get the public session done. So maybe you stick around for that. But in addition to that, you're right, like the county has, engaged and is sharing the wealth of that person and their experience in the recruitment effort. But it's very clear, at least at right now, I've seen certain announcements about, I think it's more focused on rural and northern programs that the province has just kind of soft launched. They're still working on a bit more of a program to address the needs of local physicians, but I haven't been able to, I've seen announcements and I've seen advertisements of different politicians that hire at the provincial level with saying that they're bringing 4 doctors to the community, but I can't find the background on what the actual program is. So it's going to be announced at some point, probably very soon, I'm hoping. And then we can understand if that's something that we can benefit and participate in or not. But to your point, it's very clear that this problem isn't going to be solved by the province and that municipalities are going to have to get skin in the game if they want to facilitate that. But I can tell you, it doesn't show up on the budget line yet, but what has been going on is that we're working, I've been appointed to the medical board that oversees the existing facility. And we've been working for about a year and a half to try to figure out the future iteration of that group and all the great work that they've been doing over the years in managing the existing facility and how that plays a role in the future needs of the community while not obviously jeopardizing the existing services that we have. Granted, some are younger than others from a practice standpoint, but even in maintaining the existing physicians and nurse practitioner, we had a good 6 months, I think, period where we couldn't get a nurse practitioner replacement. So there's a lot of cards in that deck stacked against us when it comes to doctor recruitment. But I think you're right. It's with the work that we've been doing on the medical board, it's time to start coming up with actual monies towards projects that are going to inevitably needed. I think the other reality is if you're talking about the example of a Norwood facility, the issue that we are also constrained by is we don't have buildings to repurpose. And we don't have like vacant properties and that would be amenable to a medical center. Whereas Norwood did, and that's why they were able to invest in that. But I think, and what I hope to present at the end of this, when we get back into the council discussion, that got cut short this afternoon, is there needs to be some money set aside for the inevitable future costs that will be, that the municipality is going to have to bear to address the medical health services vacancy or deficit in the community, whichever word you'd like.
On that particular side of it, I think that also the developers and other partners in the community need to step up as part of this in order to take care of it.
And those conversations don't show up in the budget either, but trust me, they're being had. But hopefully now with a lot of the answers to those questions and those conversations is, well, the market's starting to turn, interest rates are coming down. So there's been a little more openness to some, to even progress on getting the commercial and developments around the area, that those are now, we have a better idea that they're not just stuck in purgatory because interest rates are what they are and there's not the demand that the the owners of those properties want in order to make, to do their work and develop the properties. But those conversations are being had and there's an openness to it. And hopefully when push comes to shove, or when it's time to, be a true partner in those, we have a good track record, or at least of getting some support from some of our the people that are benefiting the most from the growth in the community, I would say. I would phrase it that way. And trust me, the expectation is that, they help us work together with this need for sure. But there will be a municipal portion that it's not going to solve itself. And if we're going to be a partner, we have to have actual money to be a partner with.
Aging in place, a lot of lip service. There actually were a couple of things that moved along, definitely in the library, the programs that are in there. However, I don't think they've got as wide a reach as what it is. And I saw in the budget that there's budgeting or a grant out there for about $75,000. Wondering what it's going to go towards. And that, again, if it's only grant based, you need to start thinking about something that is budget based to take from that point on.
I'm not sure who would like to, is anyone, Carla Carla is a bit familiar with the SALC grant, but maybe Chris can speak to that. There's also, not that it's specific, but the connection to the community is also like an accessibility grant. So those two are kind of related to what the subject you're talking about. So maybe Chris, I can ask you to provide a little clarity with regards to those two grants if you're able to.
Through you, Mayor, to Mr. Steele. So the Senior Active Living Grant, is that the one you were referring to, the SALT? Yeah. Yeah, so if approved, the Parks Department will be partnering with the library and with community care to promote wellness, social interaction, inclusion, and education to help seniors stay active. We'll be aligning it with the Community Safety and Wellbeing Plan adopted by Council. There'll be free programs. There'll be like senior skating, exercise groups, walking track programs, pickleball, arts programs, craft workshops, and lunch and learns are planned right now for that one. The Enabling Accessibility Fund grant, if approved, we'll see accessible pathways at the old school from the parking lot into the new shelter we built this year. Shelter paved over to the playground, paved to the community garden, pavement down to Distillery Street, and the walkway from Center Street to King Street, which is currently like a limestone gravel in there. That we'll see pavement on that one as well.
To follow up to that, Al, that was just answering those two questions about the grants, but I think you had more to say about that.
That's nice, but there has to be ongoing things, and again, something that's a little more formulated versus, okay, we got some grant money to spend. Where do we go from there?
Do you have anything in mind, Al, like an example? I'm just trying to while you're here. I mean, why not?
Spitballing it? Well, one is we get into a larger conversation, and that's one of when the community center was presented as what it would be. It included things such as a seniors activity location where it's drop-in. One of the key things, especially in rural communities, and Carla alluded to it in her presentation this afternoon, that seniors and loneliness becomes a big issue. So someplace where they can drop into at hours that may not be normal. However, in a community center, rec center type of thing, someplace they can go and talk to other people and communicate with them. And something that's not formal, but sort of ad hoc.
So like kind of a municipal version of it, or expansion or addition of some of those types of programs that like the Legion does, like Community Care does, because there's a lot of those programs and some of them do use the community center. So like we're trying to offset the costs of some of those, you know, when they're charitable or not-for-profit status, how we support them is by waiving those fees. But like why we've tried to do it that way thus far, and we're still like, now that we're running a few more programs out of there, like we've just, you know, I think last year, or maybe the year before, when we actually hired staff to start developing programming. To your point, I think a part of the problem is that that audience, we don't have access to, but other groups do. And so what we are trying to do is work with those partnerships that exist and expand them where possible and support them as a municipality, because rather than reinventing the wheel. Is there more we can do? Sure. And is there more we can try? Absolutely. But I think Carla has learned firsthand when we talk about some of the programs is it's tricky to get an audience of more than one or two. But when you find a great one, like the seniors, like the storytelling grant and the book that they produce, like it doesn't just, having a program doesn't mean anyone comes. And that's been a real challenge for groups within our community. I think you're seeing a lot of wear out from a lot of the volunteer associations, whether it's the Lions, the Legion, like there's a lot of familiar faces and not many new ones around these volunteer associations. So there's a lot that I'm concerned about from what I would consider culturally in the community, that we need a reinvigoration of supporting those groups and associations that contribute so much to the culture, that don't just make, you know, rather than the townships just being able to start a program and make it available, and it doesn't mean anyone will come. And I think that that's a big challenge that even groups are facing, and volunteerism we're facing as well. So we definitely have to come up with and keep trying to come up with new things, and hopefully these two grants will help. But if there are ideas, I think Chris and his staff are open to suggestions and trying these sorts of things, because we have those facilities. You know, the Overlook Lounge is one of the lesser utilized facilities, but there is the mirror and the studio that's used for all kinds of different things. And there's also an office in the back too that can be utilized just for chats. So I think Chris wants to speak to it, so I'll turn it over to him before I go too far.
Through your mayor to Mr. Steele. We partner right now with the Community Care, so we've been sort of experimenting with them. They do run a walking program for seniors and a coffee social, and they have Zumba classes so far. So they wanted to try a couple, try a couple in there, and then they want to bring more activities over as they're going. They want to see how it goes first, and we'll bring more activities in with them.
Ms. Hurley, sorry, did you want to speak to that, Yvette?
Through you, Mr. Chairman, and council, and to the public, I think, and hi, Al. We're happy to hear if you have suggestions, and you come in and we talk and things like that. To support what Chris is saying, we have increased our programming at CMCC almost double than what we had last year. And we're going to continue to do that. We'll continue to look at partnership opportunities, what we can bring. We've increased our communications last year, probably double, I would say. Bridget has done an excellent job in increasing. We've got ads in the paper. We've got a consistent look and marketing plan for it. We're trying to do more. We will continue to do more. I love your idea. I would certainly take more money. I think Bridget would take more money for communications, even a full-time communications person. I think I heard that actually. So that would be wonderful. But we'll always continue to try. And I know that there's always ways for improvement. We are looking at new ways this year. Bridget and I just met on Wednesday actually, and talked about new opportunities, new ways to reach out. I think you're going to see that roll out next year, or this year, 2025 as well. So thank you, by the way.
So Community Care does a great job. It's one that I fully endorse and support, and Karen is very active. However, Community Care's mandate falls short of what's needed out there further. And she can't get the reach out there. And thank you for bringing up getting it out there. It becomes an important part of that. And I just don't see the communications hitting the sweet spot that we need to. Because a lot of seniors will not come to organized groups because they've, I won't say they disoriented from socializing, but they're the people that need it the most are the ones that are the hardest to get out to these type of things. And it needs an atmosphere of not an exercise program. That's not the type of thing. It's a little bit, so the various groups have to get together and actually take a look at the health and wellness. So H. Peterborough, I sort of see them missing around this area.
Counselor Byrne?
Through the chair, to get back to some of the stuff about the actual budget. With your idea, I know you're passionate about the asset management. I'm kind of more fundamental. I kind of like to see us spend less than we make, start paying off our debts, not get deeper in debt before we start worrying about filling a piggy bank. So to the case in point, I lost a couple of people already because they left. But yeah, I'm more focused on that than thinking about what this is going to play out to be in a long-term thing as far as the asset management. So
it's never the last one, but at least I'll cut it off here. And that's where we start to talk about what the vision of the commercial area is within the townships or the township. A lot of money has always been focused in downtown Millbrook. Now we're talking about Fallis Line. Where is you've bought the Tinney properties? How does that sort of fit in? And how does the old fire hall, the old fire hall, fit into this whole thing? And you know, where does it sit for at least this year in the budget? Is it?
Yeah, so you weren't here this afternoon, so where it is in the budget is the economic development studies, the employment land studies. When we purchased the lands, in both cases with Moncrief and with the Tinney property, there wasn't the opportunity. How we lost out on the Tinney property before was having one condition. So there was any conditions or any studies before the purchase were going to eliminate the opportunity for the purchase. So what we now have to do and what we have budgeted for are some of the studies to do even the preliminary work as to what the even traffic or cultural significance and any EAs or flood mapping that needs to be done for the parcels that we have taken ownership of. Those are in the budget to be commenced this year. And those will then dictate how we can work with different partners in pursuing what the build out of those potential lands could be. But we have to do the due diligence first before anything occurs. But we haven't even gotten a report back to this council other than the finalization that the purchase was approved and finalized. So, and now in the budget, we're asking for the monies to do any of the due diligence to talk about what limitations, what opportunities, what buildable areas might exist on those lands, because we don't have that data without doing the due diligence on it. So that is where, to answer that one specific part, it is in the budget to be explored and then decided on based on what the findings are. And the old fire hall, we haven't had any sort of report on that yet because Bill's still in the process of moving what he needs to move out of old station 1 into new station 1. But that should be complete over the next few weeks because he's hoping to fully move in the next 2 weeks. So then that will be a different conversation. If it's identified as surplus land, then that will be or some other municipal purpose, that will be a staff direction and a report that comes forward. Well, but there was, sorry to come back again, there was a discussion that was moved by Mr. Natchoff, Councilor Natchoff at the previous meeting, to have the station 1, once it's vacated, to whatever extent it can be vacated or isn't a part of the operations, that it can be used for auxiliary parking for downtown events and things of that nature, because there's a shortage of downtown parking. So that's one other component. That's all that's been determined thus far. Staff are doing the due diligence on that as well. Thanks, Alan. I guess it's still me for a change. Other members of the public wishing to speak? Welcome.
Linda Allaire, 981 Sharp Line. So you just mentioned, Mr. Mayor, one of the items that I have heard being a complaint from some of the seniors in the township, not from within the town, but within the township. And it's the availability of parking, particularly in the summer. When we have the outdoor patios taking up what few parking spaces they are, a number of my friends have told me that they simply go to Peterborough because they can't find a parking spot that's close to the stores that they want to go to and give their custom to. And in one case, a couple of them told me that they were told to lots of parking behind the arena. And these are people with mobility issues. So they're not the ones that are going, to do the exercising on the track. They're the people who have mobility issues, come into town when they have a need to, because quite often their access is very limited because they have to get friends to drive them. And then when they do get here, they can't find parking. So they turn around and they leave. And as we see more people coming in, and I've driven through town looking for a parking spot and there isn't one. And I have parked behind the arena, but I don't have those types of issues yet. But I think that's one of the things as well, even with the outreach to people, to get them to come out to things, it's their mobility to be able to get to them, to participate in them. And please don't think that having a communication program that is put it on Town Hoopla is going to reach those folks, because it won't, because they don't access it. And that's part of the issue. The fact that we've still got a monthly newspaper is a real bonus, because that is their communication method for what's going on for a huge number of people. And if that wasn't there, you'd see even less from them, as far as I can tell.
Yeah, thanks for that, Linda. I think the parking has been a long-standing issue, and there's a myriad of moving factors that contribute to it. I mean, I think what we're optimistic about and probably hopeful about is that, the demolition of the old arena will create parking capacity in this new iteration. And I think part of the feedback that I was curious about, I didn't love what was like some of the different iterations that were just to garner feedback, but like to me, the parking, and if there's a safety need for an actual road around the existing tributary, I need to know those things with regards to that. And I didn't see that reflected in some of the issues. So we're still doing the due diligence on that. Hopefully that you can't just make another lane in the downtown, unfortunately. But I think the Tinny Lands have an opportunity in some capacity to hopefully address certain elements of that parking. I think the other component will be, the food land that has that parking now, if, that might be a parcel that comes available. And we're actually looking at nearby parcels that you might have seen, some have gone up for sale very recently. Are there parcels that might become available that could help us address that need too? And we're open to looking into that, and whether the question is, are they ever going to be close enough? I don't know, but there's definitely a need. And I'm sure no one more informed on that than Councillor Natchoff with his business downtown. I mean, he's very passionate about the parking, and we've talked about what can be done in the short order versus the long haul, but it's definitely something that I think all of staff and all of council are aware that it's not an easy problem to solve, but it's something that needs to be solved by some of the other solutions or changes that are coming to the downtown.
One of the other things that we've talked about, or a number of my colleagues and I have talked about, is I'm a member of the Lions, so the den it is accessible, but not extremely accessible. So for the events that we run there, it often isn't big enough. So having a facility that's big enough to run events in, and hearing about the programs that are coming online, has the council ever given any consideration to doing a P3 to build a standalone facility that would be multi-purpose, not to compete with the arena, but in another location, perhaps in the northern part of the township, that would provide office space if self-employed people want to have meetings and they don't want to have somebody sitting in their kitchen. Meeting rooms where some of those programs that you've talked about could be held, whether it's a social event or something where they could go and play cards without having to come downtown. That would be closer perhaps to where some of them live. Could be rental space. You could rent, an office for a day or to do a presentation or whatever, but have the developer, if there's a development going on, put that in a location and perhaps even operate it until it could be assumed. A little something extra that would be more multi-purpose for private sole source companies or even a small company to be able to access where they may not have that facilities in their existing buildings. And use it to use for some of the community stuff as well.
Yeah, I think it's a kind of, there's a lot going on in that question, so I'll try to get to it. I think what you found is that there's not a lot of development going on in the north because there's no servicing, right? So that's been a constraint. We work with developers and can utilize whatever perceived leverage we might have, which is less and less and less. But getting them to build facilities is not a small ask. And usually it's a part of a commercial build out, which we're having a very difficult time in incentivizing or motivating in any capacity anywhere, whether it's in the village or otherwise. It's just the nature of rural development. There's just not, the market's been against us for a few years. You had COVID before that. So we're not able to manifest everything given the size of the municipality and the limited budget that we have. Like you said, 1% for an extra 117,000 doesn't buy you much. So what we have been doing, I think, is auditing and going over parcels of land that the municipality has been deeded or left or willed or just had purchased and kind of neglected, or was a plan that fell away, 30 years ago, 40 years ago. So we've been trying to take an inventory and stock of what those parcels are. And if they're not going to serve a municipal purpose, sell them and get them in the hands of people that have ambitions, ideals, and development funds to actually build them, and whether it's creating jobs or creating spaces for multi-purpose use. I think what I agree with the most about your comments is that facilities really can't just provide one thing. We can't afford one thing. And I'm not trying to flog Lance's store, but even when you see retail, like retail in rural areas can't be just one thing. You're not just a sandwich shop. You're not just a place where you can buy sweaters or candles or things like that. You have to have multiple revenue streams to be able to survive. The businesses downtown, I mean, we might not like that they take up a parking space for their, for the benches and things to be outside, but they need that increased revenue to survive, not to thrive. So it is a delicate, but to the point, if you can't park, you can't go and you don't get the money. So it is a really delicate balance, and you're right. So I think what I can say is that when we go through the OP and when we do our zoning bylaw that will be following that OP, it probably won't be this council, it'll probably be the next one based on the delays from the province. But I think what that zoning bylaw is going to have to do is get out of the way of these multi-purpose dimensions that are not the traditional way the planning's been done. Usually you're only doing your residential is only that, and your commercial is only that. It can't be industrial, and your industrial can't be agriculture. So you can't have a vertical or industrial farming in industrial land. Well, it's industrial, but it's not agriculture. We have to look for opportunities for that zoning bylaw amendment and the updated zoning bylaw, that we're not missing out on the very few opportunities that we do get, but also that it sets us up in a way to have a unique, hopefully competitive advantage, that we are able to facilitate and accommodate things that might not be able to be done. So I think that's from a legislation standpoint where we've been trying to get there. We've been waiting for 2 years to get started, and we're still probably a year away from starting. And that's just the frustration of, out of your hands, out of your control, you can't do it. So But I think your comments, and I definitely think there's hopefully some things we can achieve to make an improvement, not solve the whole riddle, but try to make gains in both of those directions in the short order. But thanks, Linda. Other members of the public? Going once? Okay. One more time. Welcome back, Stephen.
It's me again. I just want to take the opportunity to thank these people for coming out. Myself, I've been in the area for 25 years now, and I've just learned a few things. Chris, the opportunities that you've presented, I didn't even know existed. It gets back to his point too as well. We need to hear these things. I'm up in the north end. I'm not downtown where I hear these things. And as a senior, I gotta admit, I am terrible with a computer. So I don't come home and jump on the computer and see what's happening on the website. Maybe a flyer in the mail or something, something to just highlight what's going on. Even more of these meetings, it doesn't have to be a budget meeting, but a meeting where you just put it out there saying, on this day of this month, anybody wants to come out and say their piece that's good for our area, I think that would be fantastic. And you learn too. I'd love to get together and talk with you guys. I didn't even know all this stuff goes on, and I appreciate everything you guys do. Honest again. But I don't want to feel stupid, but I didn't even know this stuff existed. Anyways, thank you so much.
No, Stephen, and that's a great comment. And I think what the collective people in here can do isn't because you've made the effort, you've come, you've listened, you've learned in some capacities. And what I would ask that you do is if people have questions and want to know, we're here to answer those questions. And if the counselor doesn't know the answer, or they can come to me, or we can connect you with staff, the right people. And I'm not saying that's the cure all, I'm not, but don't hesitate. Like, that is the job that all of us put our names forward to do. And we're fortunate enough to receive the support from the community to have. So there shouldn't, I feel like there's this, I don't want to, like, if I put my hand up, then they'll know it's me who spoke. And it's like, if you don't, we're never going to hear what you have to say. And that's the balance, is that I hope if one thing I could ask of anyone who shows up is turn that dichotomy around. Like, because no one's a monster at the table. Like, we were just people like you with our own questions. And that's how 90% of us got to here, was we had questions and we wanted to learn more and see what we could do to contribute. Like, that's regardless of how you feel about different people of politics, like at the municipal level, if you didn't care, why would you do this? Like, it's not for the money. It's not for you know, the easy problems to solve, as you're hearing. Like, but so that's my one takeaway. Just just send an email, make a phone call if you don't want to email it. Like, you can do those things at any time. Text, whatever you'd like to do. Is don't hesitate, because there's no penalty to do it. I promise. Even if it's about your property taxes, you don't get many of those anymore, but it doesn't get you on some no-fly list or some radar detection. Like, it's just a question.
That point, I totally agree. I'm not afraid to stand up and ask a question. It's just the fact, I don't know who to address it to. I don't have your address. I know you're not going to give out your phone number. I don't ask for that, but it's a matter of anybody in this room, such as Chris, with his ideas. I think they're great, but I wouldn't know to come and talk to Chris, you know, like direct myself to him and ask him these questions, what opportunities are out there. That's where I'm lacking. I just don't know who's who. I think once again, maybe in a flyer or something, put down the list of email address or got a question that was in this frame, goes that way or something, somewhere where we can direct it to. But if I go home right now, my wife says, oh, what's this one? I said, I don't know who to talk to. You know what I mean? It's just, yeah, it's crazy. But that's all we need, is just some way of getting communication. And I think in that point too, there'd be more than what, 9 people out. You know, it'd be nice to see more people and get more ideas out here and keep everybody in the same boat. Instead of, like, say, people running to this fella here asking questions, my neighbors run to me and say, what's going on, Steve? And I was like, I don't know either, you know? But anyways, that's all I'm saying. I think you guys do a great job. Just need to know who to talk to when the time comes. I'm not putting anyone on a spot in here, but one of you guys sitting on these tables is my neighbor, and I go through my other neighbor to that neighbor to find things out. And that's not the right way, really. It should be a direct contact with you guys. And once again, thank you for your time.
Thanks for that, Stephen. Councillor Nacho?
Thank you through you, Chair. I just want to say thank you. I think the most important thing was the very first step you made today was actually coming today. So not knowing, as you were saying, where to go and who to speak with. I think this is, thank you for coming out tonight and all the other people that have attended. Al, as always, for your passion for, what we're doing here, and as much as you support us and keep us, wanting to do better, make ourselves better politicians as well and serve you better. I've had a few takeaways myself tonight that I think that I could work with directly, being a business owner. And I would say like 90% of the correspondence I have with the constituents of my community are because I have a business and they come into my business to talk to me about those things. I think that I have a couple of ideas myself that I could work with our department without adding any money to our budget. That could just be, Yvette is wonderful and her on the staff to be able to share ideas of where we can work most effectively. So I have hopes of sitting down with everyone in the next little while and putting out a few ideas. And if I'll throw 10 at the wall, and if one sounds viable and doable, then we'll go from there. But I want to say thanks.
Yep, I completely agree. Good. We'll look forward to those ideas, Councillor Natchoff. And if you need, or anyone else wants, but all the cards are on the front table there, so take one with you, and so you'll have that too. But we'll work on something else. I know there's a couple ideas in the hopper as well. Is that echoing? Is it just me? Anyways, I'll try to do better communicating. Okay. Anyone else? Going once, going twice? So we need a resolution. So before we do that, just again, thank you to everyone for participating, for coming out. I hope you share those messages that we talked about. We need a resolution to close the public meeting. Moved by Deputy Mayor Huntley, seconded by Councillor Natchoff. All in favor? That is approved. So now we are going back to reopen the discussion with regards to 6.1. So where we left off was, so we haven't had any discussion about additional cuts, and we haven't had any discussion about where we're going to go with the asset replacement reserve. As I already alluded to Mr. Steele, the one thing that I think it's more than time for us to commit some monies towards is what I'm going to call a health and medical center reserve. We don't have a reserve set aside, just like we're putting monies towards the park to kind of enhance the parkland reserve, to make adjustments and improvements to the various amenities we have throughout the township. We have to have some money set aside to start, planning for the future costs that we're working towards. And like I said, we're working well with the medical board, but the medical board is really just focused on maintaining what we have. And as Al knows, and as we've talked about, we know that one of our physicians is nearing the end of their practice. And I think that we're going to have what the conversation we've had, I think Al was there, you were there with me when we were talking with Tracy with regards to the constraints of the issues or obstacles with doctor recruitment is she's going to have a hard time finding a doctor that wants to go and practice in that medical center. Regardless of how I feel about it, regardless of that, it's not that it's impossible, but it's not going to meet the needs of our community as we continue to grow, which means there has to be an additional facility for that. So we need to start planning and commencing for that. I was hopeful that we'd have more of the planning legislation behind us and those new things, but that's been kind of out of our hands too. But so what I want to propose is, depending on how, we can debate the amount, but I would think in no less than $50,000 from the budget, or 58,550 would be 0.5% of the levy to be allocated to the creation of a health and medical center reserve for future costs for those related projects. Because without some money set aside, we got to start saving, is my opinion on the matter. But happy to have a discussion with regards to that motion. And then if there's any other elements that everyone want to introduce, and then we can also talk about the asset replacement reserve and where we're going to go with that to give staff some direction to where we want to go with the final tax levy increase. So first things first, I'm not asking for a mover and a seconder, but I can refine that motion based on the conversation amongst the councillors. But any questions with regards to the health and medical center reserve? So Natchoff.
Thank you through you, Chair. I think it's a great idea. I'm strongly in favor of it. Having heard and spoken with numerous seniors in throughout the township, I think that it's best that we plan for the future, even if it's just a matter that we're putting away a small amount today to be a greater amount for something down the road. And we can enable maybe future councils to be able to at least have something in place that will better support when the decision comes. I think as well, it would be next to impossible to be able to attract the people we're trying to attract if we don't have the opportunities to have better facilities. So I commend you on the recommendation and you have my support.
Other questions with regards to the motion? Deputy Mayor?
Through you, Chair, that was correct. Yeah, and I think we've had multiple discussions with the physician recruiting position, and one of the biggest obstacles we face is a lack of facilities. So even if we were getting out physicians, where do we put them? If we were to get nurse practitioners, where do we put them? And the more and more we learn, the more and more they're looking for turnkey operations. So I agree completely that we should be starting to put stuff away. My only suggestion on this one is that you've come up with a number of 58,000 based on, I'm guessing, half of a levy increase. But when I look at our existing reserves, we have our old municipal council grant reserve at $57,000. So it's almost that same number. So I'm wondering whether if we don't add it to a levy this year, but we convert that reserve over.
So it would be a valid idea, Councillor Huntley, but at the first budget meeting, we reallocated the 57,000 from that grant to the Parks and Rec reserve. And so that was already approved by council. So because for that exact same reason, the cost amenities are expensive. It's not used for anything. It's been sitting there in isolation and hasn't been touched. So the justification was we moved it towards, again, there was only 40,000 in the parkland reserve or something, 40,000 and change. And so we thought, well, if we're not using it, we should get it there, because even now, if we approve the 17,000 increase and with that 57,000, we're still at barely 230,000, maybe 225, which barely buys a swing set. Yeah, so unfortunately you weren't there for that first meeting, but so that solution is gone, but happy to hear other questions with regards to the proposed reserve creation for that purpose. If there's no other questions, we can take a vote. Does anyone have a question or a preference? I mean, 58,550 is 0.5%. That's why I thought it was simple, but that's just how my head works. But I mean, I wish it could be $1 million, because I'm not sure what we're going to have to be on the hook for, but there's no solution coming and there's no monies that come out of the ether for it yet. So first step, let's start with the 58,550. So the motion would be that council directs the creation of a health and medical center reserve and allocate 0.5% of the tax levy, or $58,550 in the 2025 budget to this reserve. Any questions about that motion? Seeing none, call for the vote. All in favor? That is approved. So you can make that addition, Kimberly, and we'll go forward. So any other questions with regards to? Oh, sorry, mover or seconder. Sorry, I moved it. Deputy Mayor seconded. Sorry. Other questions or discussion with regards to the budget. That brings us up to now what would by my calculation 5.4. So based on the discussion we had at council, or at the end of the first council meeting in the afternoon, a 2% tax levy reduction would get us to 3.4%. So a 2% would be 8% of the ARR. So that would be equivalent to matching the 92. Did you say 92% last year? Or was it 96? Right in the middle, 94. So slightly less, but still over 90%. That would accumulate a 3.4% tax levy increase, would establish that reserve. And then we're in the sort of target area that we talked about, unless there's other discussion to be had. Open the floor. Seeing none. So then I guess the direction will be, I gotta go back to this. So the direction with regards to the ARR could be something to the effect that council direct the 2025 asset replacement reserve contribution be reduced by approximately $232,000, or the specific amount required to establish a tax levy increase of up to 3.4% in the final budget report to come back on the 27th. Any questions about the motion, Deputy Mayor Huntley?
Through you, Chair, I agree with your motion. I think it might be a little bit overcomplicated. I think if we've established the reserve and then we just set the target for the municipal tax rate and have the difference come out of asset reserve, I think is all you're looking for. Rather than having approximate numbers, just that difference comes.
Yeah, the only caveat, it doesn't really change to the point, but the expectation is, should there be some earth-shattering cost creation between now and the 27th, the expectation is not that there's just a blank check to take 500,000 out of the ARR. We're expecting it to be in the realm of just over 232,000. And that was my only, it's not like a, hey, oh yeah, look, we found all these costs. Like now we're just going to be 50% of the ARR target. There's a net, so I just for my comfortability, and I drafted the motion. So I mean, I guess I can do what I want, but I might lose your support on the length of the motion. So I'll guess I'll roll that dice. But anyways, the motion as presented is, do I have a mover and a seconder? Moved by Councillor Natchoff, seconded by Deputy Mayor Huntley. Any questions about the motion? Seeing none, we'll call for the vote. All in favor? That is approved. Now we go to, do we need that's the motion, so we're done with that. The confirming bylaw, right? Is that bylaw number 2025-02 being a bylaw to confirm the proceeding of the special meeting held January 9th, 2025 at 5 p.m. Be read a first, second, third time and passed this 9th day of January, signed by the mayor and the clerk, and the corporate seal attached thereto. Moved by Deputy Mayor Huntley and Councillor Natchoff. All in favor? That is approved. Lastly, motion to adjourn tonight's meeting. Councillor Byrne and Deputy Mayor Huntley, all in favor? That is also approved. Thanks everyone again for your comments and attending, and we will have that final budget meeting in the January 27th.